You are listening to Dodging Divorce Disasters, a podcast where I interview divorce professionals that give you clear guidance, real talk, and smart strategies to help you make better decisions when it matters most. My name is Lori Hawkins. I am a divorce realtor, expert, and your host. I have the privilege of working with these professionals daily, and there is a wealth of knowledge in each episode. Let's get started. I am so excited today because I have Kelley Hughes. It is Hughes, right? Yes, because she got married, and it's been a while back, but I always get her last name mixed up. Kelley, welcome. I am so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lori.
Of course. Okay, so now Kelley is a CDFA, correct?
Yes.
And I am going to let you kind of go through and do the name of your company, where you could take clients from, and all of that kind of good stuff.
Got it. So my company is Smart Divorce Decisions. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst, and I work with women who are going through the divorce process. I help them understand the financial aspects of the divorce negotiations, and I make recommendations as to how to set themselves up financially for stability after the divorce.
Okay, so you work exclusively with women.
I do.
Okay, that's good to know. I cannot tell you how important I think it is now for people going through a divorce to work with the CDFA. When I went through my divorce years ago, I didn't even know a CDFA existed, but now that I am working in this niche, you guys provide so much guidance and information that if I had had you back then, I probably would be set up a lot better financially than
Lori,
I.
I can't tell you how many times I hear that exact sentiment. It's just, I think it's because a lot of people don't realize that divorce is primarily about the financial aspect. It's about
Exactly.
dividing the assets, dividing the liabilities. And it's lots of times people tend to get caught up in the other aspects of the divorce process, custody, child support, and not focusing so much on spousal support and which assets would benefit which partner best. And there
Right.
are certain assets that are more beneficial depending on the situation. Things like future projected income, liquidity needs, whether or not the mortgage is going to need to be refinanced, which is kind of falling into your arena, and
Mhm.
how to decide how to make those first few years after the divorce good for everybody, including the children involved.
Right, exactly. And I think you hit the nail right on the head is that divorce is so much financial. But when you're going through it, it is so much emotional. And so that's why I think it's so important to have someone like you that is outside the emotion, a neutral person that can okay, let's get your act together. I mean, you are there to lead and guide and make those of us that are going through a divorce think about things that we don't want to think about right now. Because our heart just wants to get through the divorce.
Yes.
But you have the frame of mind to say, yeah, let's say the divorce goes on for 2 years, but then after 2 years, all of this is going to be over and you need to be set up financially.
And, the worst thing that could happen is a divorce that goes on for 2 or more years because nothing's being decided. People can't move on and actually make some financial progress when they're just sitting in limbo. That's kind of why I got into being a CDFA, Lori. I was going through a divorce process myself. And even though I'm a financial advisor, I have an advisory practice and all of that. And I was working with CFPs and financial advisors. I couldn't really find somebody who could sit down, who was knowledgeable about the divorce process and help me think through the decisions that I needed to make. Okay, for instance, I had 3 children from that marriage.
Mhm.
And so my oldest was a freshman in high school at the time I was going through my divorce. So I knew that while child support would be available for my oldest, I knew that it would eventually be coming to an end because in my state, North Carolina, a child support ends when the child is 18 and graduated high school. So I knew that whatever we were going to be agreeing to in terms of child support at this point in time, I knew that that was going to be quickly changing.
Mhm.
And then so on for my second child, within 6 years from the divorce, child support would be going away. And, that simply because of what I do for a living, I knew that that was going to have a big impact on the financial decisions I was going to be making after the divorce in terms of where I was going to live. Was I going to be renting a house, or was I going to be rolling my home equity that I took from the divorce settlement straight into another piece of property?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so understanding how long of a time frame I needed to be making decisions for, because the settlement decisions were going to have a long lasting impact on me financially and on my kids. I really needed somebody with an outside perspective, as you put it, to help me think through each individual negotiation point.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And in all honesty, with me not even knowing CDFAs existed, I relied on this information to come from my attorney,
Mhm.
which I think that's what a lot of people do because when you think about getting a divorce, the first thing you think of is, "Oh, I've got to contact an attorney." And which is great. I mean, I am very pro contacting attorneys, but there is a lot of work that they could do with you that would help them spend their money more wisely when they actually pick an attorney and go see them. Is that correct?
I totally agree with that. There's a lot of financial information that needs to be gathered before the attorney can actually get going. And because attorneys, they are going to be focused on what are the issues to be negotiated? What is this supporting documentation to help me be your advocate in this matter?
Mhm.
And that's when I work with clients before they're really getting going with their attorney. I'm helping them understand, where do I find the tax returns? I never had anything to do with the CPA. Where do I find the social security statement? How do I access the retirement account through my spouse's employer? And really gathering all of the information they need. Sometimes I'll even have my clients write out a timeline of important dates and
Mhm.
events that pertain to marital versus separate
Right.
property. And
Right.
so when by the time they are sitting down with their attorney, they have a full understanding of, here's what I want you to propose for me. Here's the information I have that you're going to need. And here's a list of information I need you to request from my spouse.
Yeah, I mean, that would knock the socks off most family law attorneys if they actually could have a client come in and say, "Look, this is this." Now, the attorney may need to tweak it. It's not like you're gonna give them something that they're just saying, "Okay, write this up for me and get him to sign it or get her to sign it or whatever." But it makes a really good dent in the process to have that.
Yes. And the attorneys that I work with, they appreciate how prepared my
Yes,
clients are, and they
and
send clients to me because they're having difficulty getting the information that they need to move forward on their
right.
client's behalf.
And that is not a lot of attorneys, even though they are, like I said before, I have the utmost respect, but a lot of them aren't numbers people. I mean, they know family law. That's what their specialty is. That's why you're going to them. But crunching numbers, and a lot of people I hear all the time say, money is so tight. I cannot afford to go to a CDFA. I can't a divorce coach, whatever the divorce professional that is suggested to them. But I guarantee that you would be surprised the amount of time that they could come to you and you could work this stuff up for them versus going to an attorney and them at their extreme hourly rate, try to do the same thing, even if you had an attorney that would say, "Oh, yeah, I'll work on all this for you." You would be right. You could I don't know if they could pay for your bill, but it would at least cover some of it, that's for
Well,
sure.
a lot of attorneys are gonna pull in paralegals and associate attorneys to help at a lower hourly rate with that kind of information, but what I will say is having a CDFA prepare the financial aspect of it and really get a recommendation of which assets will be most beneficial, the settlement will be much better if you have somebody who's got the financial expertise to actually recommend which financial products are in your best interest in the settlement.
Right. Well, I noticed that you had written down that you like to help, that you're really qualified to help with gray divorces.
Oh,
For our listeners that are listening to this, explain what a gray divorce is and why is that important? What
okay.
how did that
So
get there?
the majority of my divorce cases right now that I'm working and have been working for the past year or so have been what we call a gray divorce. So people getting divorced in their 50s or older. And the reason this is significant is because you're taking a couple who has been planning for retirement to look a certain way. And now all of a sudden they're dividing what they have accumulated together to provide for each other in their retirement. They're dividing it in half. At the same time, they are increasing their living expenses. They're doubling it, right? You're going to
Right.
have go from one household to two households. So this type of divorce settlement in particular requires a lot more finesse to make sure that not only the divorcing couple, each of them are going to be okay financially after the divorce, but this also trickles into their adult children. Because making sure that both parties are going to be financially stable after the divorce is critical to make sure that they're not going to be financially or physically dependent on their grown children down the road.
That is such a good point because 'cause I've already had to explain to my children that I'm gonna have to live with one of them. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
So you see the significance of making sure
Definitely.
that not only is each person going to be financially stable for the, 3 years after the divorce, but also 20 years after
Right.
the divorce.
And, a gray divorce, that is a real thing. Out of the last 5 listings that I've had selling a home through a divorce, 3 of them have been gray divorces.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it is becoming like the major amount of people percentage of people that are divorcing.
Right.
It's a real thing. It's
Yeah.
a real thing.
It is.
Well, let me ask you this. I always like to talk about a fun fact. I ask you guys a fun fact, and you said that you love to go to live music shows. Now, are you talking about concerts or
Yes, I
just
am. There's nothing I love to do more than going to a live music show, and I don't care who it is. It could be the local Dave Matthews tribute band, it could be a national touring show that comes to our local amphitheater. There is something so special about being in an audience, watching music be performed live, looking around you and seeing everybody in the audience enjoying the same moment that
Mhm,
you are.
mhm.
It's no greater sense of community, in my opinion.
So it can go from country music to
Well, I'd have to draw the
whatever.
line at like a heavy metal band. I'm
Yeah.
not going to enjoy that as much as I would some other types, but
Yeah. No, I can't even say I agree with you on this because large crowds like that, I don't like them that much. But my daughter, on the other hand, she totally agrees. I mean, she just goes to these little places that have it's a little intimate little thing, and she loves it. She thinks the same thing. So there I
yeah.
know there's people out there that would totally say, "Yeah, Kelly, you're right."
Well, this is interesting, but this isn't something that I ever really did a lot of before I got divorced. It was something, I'd always grown up. I'm a musician myself. My mom's a musician. So music was always a really big part of my life. But when I was married before, my husband at the time didn't really enjoy that. And so that was one of the things that I started doing with friends and just like kind of expanded my horizons after my divorce. And I discovered, oh my gosh, there is nothing more fun to do than this.
So that's fun.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if we mentioned either clientele. Where is it just you mentioned being in North Carolina. Is it just North Carolina? How do you do this?
Okay, so the way I practice and the way I run my CDFA consulting business, I can do CDFA work. So I can do financial analysis for a divorce happening in any state. And a lot of times when I'm working for attorneys as a trial consultant, it's going to be in a different state. But when I'm working specifically as a financial advocate for women, I'm working primarily in North Carolina and South Carolina because I will be their advocate from before the divorce process starts all the way to going into mediation with them and with their attorney. So, since I
Okay.
live in Charlotte, South Carolina and North Carolina are the most convenient locations for me to go
Okay.
to mediation. I'm currently
So
working on a case in Atlanta, and I'm going to be available by Zoom and by phone for that mediation. So that'll
okay.
be the first time I'm doing it kind of virtually. We'll see how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. 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 All right. Well, let's jump into the main reason that I do this podcast. It's dodging divorce disasters because anybody that works in any kind of area of divorce has seen our clients make bad decisions.
Yes.
And we know that things could have gone a lot differently. They could have actually dodged this divorce disaster if maybe they had chosen a different route, perhaps. Tell us a story that you have seen from dealing with one of your clients or in that realm that you could give good advice or practical tips on how our listeners could avoid these pitfalls.
Can I share more than one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So a couple of cases come to mind. All right. So here's a very common scenario. One case that I saw, the mom and the dad both had a priority that their children not have to change schools
Mhm.
after the divorce, right? And the way the support payments were going to work out, neither one of them, well, he didn't want to stay in the marital residence, and she wasn't going to be able to afford to stay
Mhm.
in the marital residence. So she agreed to be obligated to always live in the school district for the children.
Oh my goodness.
This ended up being a problem for her financially because it was a very high cost of living in that particular school district. And the support payments, and then she lost her job pretty soon after the
Oh
divorce
my
was
goodness.
finalized. The spousal support payments did not increase because they were not modifiable, and the child support, she couldn't really afford the legal proceedings to file for a modification of
Mhm.
child support. And so I saw that obligation to stay in the school district ended up putting a financial hardship on her and her children after the divorce. So that's one thing that I would mention is unless you're absolutely certain you're not going to have any trouble 4 years from now being able to afford staying in a school district, don't accept an obligation to live there.
Ah, that is great advice, and that
Mhm.
is heartbreaking, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So another situation that I've seen that I would call a divorce disaster. Lots of times people, especially when you're getting into the gray divorce arena, lots of times people are really emotional about family heirlooms, really emotional about furniture, about home furnishings. And they lose sight of the importance of making sure that the retirement account assets are distributed appropriately, that their liquidity needs are going to be met. And so they spend a lot of time focusing on making that household inventory checklist and like trying to research values for grandma's butter churner or
Yeah,
instead of focusing on, I need to make sure I get his social security statement because that's actually really going to be relevant to me in about 10 years.
yeah.
One case, and Lori, I'm not exaggerating. I was reviewing my client's information and saw that she had spent $4,000 having her attorney negotiate for the wedding china that was actually valued $400.
You mean the time it took her attorney, that was how much she had paid her attorney
Yes.
to negotiate for that $400 china.
Yes. And it's because people, as you said earlier, people get emotional about items and about aspects of their marital standard of living, and they can lose sight of what's going on and what's really truly important. And so I think that's actually one of the major benefits of starting with the CDFA before you get into it, because then you kind of you're like, all right, here's what is on the table for negotiation, and here's what's most important to me. And do I really need to fight that hard over the wedding china? Because, in all honesty, does he really want it? Or is he
Right.
trying to use it as a negotiating tactic so that I let go of his IRA?
That is exactly right. I have heard so many stories of something just like this. You know, I mean, eh, when every time I do one of these podcasts and we start talking about divorce, I mean, and I'm sure probably with you too, I think of things that I did incorrectly because I hear people talk, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that was me so many years ago. And I'm kind of repeating myself, but the emotional part of it for the people that are actually going through it, if you're the one that maybe doesn't want the divorce, let's say, and you're really hurting, it's almost just like you want that other person to hurt. And so you do the dumbest things. You fight over the dumbest things just to prove that you can win. And it's like all logic
Uh-huh.
flies out the window. Because okay, when she saw that, she was probably, "Yes, yes, I got that china," and then probably put it in a yard sale 6 months later. But at the point, she was just like, "Yes, he didn't get it." I believe, I mean, and I couldn't do this at the time, but if we could honestly, if you were in this situation, if there was any way to take a pill to take away the emotions and actually start looking at this from a business perspective. Okay, I'm here. It's not going to change. How do I get through it and come out on the other side much better off? And that to me has divorce coach and CDFA written all over it because
Absolutely. I've seen both situations, Lori. I've seen some people just fight to the nitty-gritty because they didn't want the divorce. I've also seen people not even expect what they're actually entitled to
right, right.
because they just were so downtrodden at what was happening. And in those situations, especially, I think it's really important to have not just an attorney advocating for you, but also a financial advocate, because sometimes you're not in the right headspace to be your own advocate or even to comprehend the implications of everything that's being discussed and
Yeah.
negotiated.
No, you're exactly right.
Mhm.
I know even when I'm selling the home, I hear this all the time when I bring an offer, to each of them, which I present the offer separately. Nothing is ever done jointly, but it's always just like, I just want to get this over with.
Yeah.
I'm tired of this. Just take it. Just
Yep.
take it. I don't care. I don't even want to negotiate it. I'm just
Yep.
done. Because you get worn out through the
Yeah.
process. And that's on a good divorce when I mean you have to wait that year, I mean in North
Right.
Carolina at least. So, you have to wait that year, but then you're just like, and those that go on for years and years, God bless their souls
Yeah.
because that would be horrible as far as
Well,
I'm
that can actually
concerned.
be a tactic that's used in the divorce process. I had a client who came to me. She was 2.5 years into her divorce process, and she'd spent a lot of money on a retainer for her attorney and for everything that her attorney had tried to get in place for her up to that point. 2.5 years later, she still didn't have a child support order. She did not have a spousal support order. Gone back to work after being a stay-at-home spouse for years. And actually, the last time I checked in with her, it was 5 years after the divorce, still didn't have an equitable distribution order, still did not have a child support order, and both children had already aged out of being eligible. So now we're talking about child support arrears, no spousal support, and she was living with her sister.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
I know, I know. I mean, it's just, It's not a good situation. I know people need to get out of marriages for many different reasons, but it's just hard.
Yep.
That's the bottom line of it. Even a good divorce is hard.
Yep, it is. But the best ones, and I think the situations where I see that are best for the kids are the divorce settlements where each person is financially stable
Yeah.
and is going to be able to say, let's take the kids to the trampoline park for a play date. I don't need to worry about that. And the kids' lives are going to be as similar as possible to what they were before the couple split up.
Yeah.
That makes co-parenting much easier
Mhm.
because there's less to argue financially about after the divorce, because lots of times when people are end up in settlements or support orders that are not sufficient for each person's needs, then the arguing that led up to the divorce just continues.
Yeah.
Just
No,
continues.
you're right.
And
Nope,
then
you're exactly right.
sometimes when you have step parents enter the picture,
Yeah, it's
then
even
it gets
worse.
even more contentious.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Well, let me ask you for those of the listeners that may only be listening and don't see it on video, tell us the best way for them to contact you. How
Okay.
should they contact you?
All right. So my website is smartdivorcedecisions.com. You can find me on Facebook at Smart Divorce Decisions on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn at Smart Divorce Decisions. And you can find me on Instagram at Smart Divorce Decisions.
All right. That makes life
Message me any of
easy.
those places and you'll reach me.
That sounds great. Well, now, before we sign off, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want them to know, either about what you do or any kind of situation? Is there anything going on that I missed?
So, something that I see quite often in just about every divorce case is people have not talked with a CPA to understand the tax implications regarding the marital residence. And they haven't talked with a mortgage broker when they're considering refinancing to buy out the other person. Those two conversations absolutely need to happen before any agreements are made regarding the marital residence, because without that information, I actually had a case last spring. Those conversations hadn't happened. She was ordered and obligated to buy out her ex-husband from his share in the equity, and
Mhm.
she did not qualify for a mortgage.
Oh, my.
And both of them were having to incur legal expenses to go back to redo that because it had
Mhm.
been a court-approved order. So,
Gotcha.
talking with a CPA, talking with a mortgage broker, dotting your I's and crossing your T's before you
Right.
enter into the agreement is a must do.
And there are CDLPs, which are certified divorce lending professionals, which is
Absolutely.
who I would suggest you go see because just like you and myself, they are specialized in divorce, the regulations, the tax rules, all that kind of stuff that a traditional lender doesn't have.
Yep, that's
So
right.
yeah, that's another good tip. Well, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your expertise with us. You gave us some great information and great stories that hopefully everyone listening will know not to do.
Well, good. I hope they help somebody, and thank you again for the opportunity. I always love talking with you, but I also always love talking with you about this.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. All right. Thank you so much. It was good to see you.
Thanks, Laura. You too.
Okay.
Bye.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information contained herein is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek an attorney.